Hey there! Welcome to the first episode of Gripe, short and sweet movie reviews, plus the one thing that bothered me most about new movies. I'm Danielle Kestner, and welcome to the show. It's the first episode. I'm very excited. I'm a huge movie buff. I love going to the movies. I love watching movies. I have a ginormous movie collection, so it's one of those things that, eventually I'm going to just sit down and talk about movies because why not? So, this is the show to do that. It's called Key Gripe. I'm very excited about it. Basically just going to be reviewing new movies, new releases that I see in theaters. Talk about, what the movie was like. Was it good? Was it bad? And then also get into the one thing that bugged me the most. So, hope you enjoy it. And today's, for the first episode of Key Gripe, we'll be talking about the new Mission Impossible movie, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, which came out in theaters last week. Very excited about this movie. I'm a huge Mission Impossible fan of the other movies. I actually, surprisingly, actually even enjoyed Mission Impossible 2 quite a bit, even though I know it's nowhere near up to par with, like, say, the first Mission Impossible or 3 or 4, but it's on its own a fairly enjoyable movie. And when you're talking about, like, the spy movie genre, I mean, Mission Impossible is right up there with James Bond and The Bourne Identity. Those three series have really been the core of spy movies for the last 15 years or so, especially the new James Bond movies, the Daniel Craig James Bond movies, have really reinvigorated that franchise. And it's nice to see that Mission Impossible is keeping step with it, especially with the last two movies, both Rogue Nation and Ghost Protocol, kind of breaking from their formula a bit, taking a little bit more of a risk, and then producing something that's a little bit unexpected from especially what you got with the first three. Because the first three movies were really epic in their scale, and they had a lot of crazy stuff going on. Not to say these other two didn't, but it just seems like in these last two they sort of grounded it a little bit more. They shrunk the story, and they actually put the focus more where it should be, of IMF being this team. You have Ethan Hunt. He's obviously the hero of this story. He's the protagonist, but he can't do it alone, and they really do reinforce that, especially in Ghost Protocol and in Rogue Nation. Those two, they really do reinforce that it's a team effort, which is something you don't necessarily get with James Bond, or you don't get with Jason Bourne. So that's what's really cool about it. But for Rogue Nation itself, it's a pretty good movie. I was impressed with just like the action, the fun about, it's very much a Mission Impossible movie. There's actually very little surprise in the plot itself. I'm not going to say that it doesn't tread any new water, because it does, but a lot of times it almost feels like it's an amalgamation of these other spy movies that includes both some of the other Mission Impossible movies as well as some James Bond movies. It almost feels like it's kind of pulling, or almost like a homage to those other movies, which is kind of cool in a way, but at the same time you're also thinking, it's like, haven't I seen this before? Um, Either way, jolly good fun no matter what. And I'm not going to give away any of like the plot details, but there actually is a pretty good twist in the movie that takes the story in a bit of a different direction that we haven't really seen in the Mission Impossible movies much. And it's questioning the sanity of what they're doing. Like in Mission Impossible, they're doing these things, they're coming up with these plans that are just like ridiculous all the time. It's like, I'm gonna pendulum from a building to another building, or break into some facility, or kidnap a high-ranking official. It's always a ridiculous plan like that. And in this movie, they actually question that. They say, "Isn't this really ridiculous?" And it's funny in that sort of meta way of asking a question that everybody in the audience is saying, nobody in their right mind would do something like this, or this would not be the logical plan. So it's kind of interesting in that way. And ultimately, the way the movie ends is somewhat surprising in itself, because it also ends in a way that no other Mission Impossible movie has yet. So it has that too. It's surprising. I'm not going to say it really does tread a lot of new ground, but as a whole movie, it is quite complete. It's not too ridiculous in terms of, being able to believe the plot. I mean, it's not as incoherent as a couple of the other Mission Impossible movies, but it certainly isn't also all that complicated. You can kind of see the twists coming, you can see all these different turns, but that doesn't mean that it's a bad movie, because it's still, at its core, it's entertaining. The stunts are fantastic. There's, a lot of, interesting scenarios that they come up with to throw throw these guys into. The comedy is always good. So you have a guy like Simon Pegg in any movie, of course he's going to be funny. So on the whole, I don't know if I would say it's the best Mission Impossible movie, but it's certainly a strong candidate for the best. It's in that it feels like the most complete Mission Impossible movie. Even though it does, I would say it gets off to a little bit of a shaky start. But you can't fault a movie, everything. But I can fault it for its key gripe. So here's my key gripe in this movie. And this is something that bugs me in a few movies, but this one seemed to do it most noticeably. Whenever there's a car chase, usually it happens in like a metropolitan area. You don't have a lot of car chases out in the, unless you're Mad Max, you don't have a lot of these car chases out in the, middle of nowhere. So you have a car chase in like a metropolitan or like a city, or at least some place that's got to have people. So often those car chases occur and there's nobody on the street. Now, I can understand that if it's like 3 in the morning, but at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon in Morocco, in Casablanca, it's not a small city, they're driving through this place and there is nobody on the street. Usually there's at least somebody like jumping out of the way, or, everybody's like screaming, getting out of the way. No, there is nobody on the street. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a fun car chase, but there is nobody on the streets. It's like, where are these people? Where do they think this like is, that there's just no, like, whenever there's a car chase, everyone goes inside and watches it on TV? No. So that's definitely my key gripe in this movie, is a car chase that, as fun as it is, doesn't have a lot of realism to it. So, but truth be told, if that's the biggest gripe from the movie, then it must be a pretty good movie. Overall, yes, I would say it is a good movie. You do get to see a lot of Tom Cruise running, because it's not a Tom Cruise movie unless he is doing a lot of running. He loves his running. So, yeah, overall, I'd give it probably 7.5 out of 10 stars, which, that rating could fluctuate over time after I see it again, but at this point, leaving that movie, how I felt, entertainment-wise, quality, production, all that stuff, if I had to give it a knee-jerk rating, I would give it 7.5 out of 10. So that's my review of Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. Go see it. It's in theaters now. Otherwise, I will see you next time on another episode of Key Gripe. Take it easy, people.